right, Charlie, it is now Mailbag Monday time, so let's get to it.
This is going to be a pretty robust Mailbag Monday, more than usual.
We have a lot, and I wanted to really do this. I mean, it's Monday, and I want to do Mailbag Monday, so I don't have to come up with the topics. But also just to see, like, with Game 82, are people more focused on the right now or what's going to happen, from Wednesday on?
It appears
perhaps?
they're not focused on either. They're focused on some idiot getting arrested at Flyers practice.
Of course, with all of this going on, rebuilding, this crazy roller coaster that the team's been on, all the stuff that could play out over the next 2 to 3 days on the ice. Our first question is from listener Devon. Charlie, who got arrested at Flyers practice? What the hell happened today?
I don't know,
It was
man.
all over Twitter.
Yeah, of course it was all over Twitter because it's stupid shit, and Twitter loses its mind over stupid shit. I have no idea who got arrested at Flyers practice. I did not see it. I do not care. Who gives a shit? It was probably some random dude who lurks around, and they probably told him multiple times, stop showing up to practice looking menacing, and he kept showing up to practice looking menacing, and they called the cops.
Looking menacing.
I don't... There are 20 things I care significantly more about right now than some idiot that got arrested at Flyers practice.
So
I don't care. I'm not looking into it because it's stupid.
It wasn't Cam Atkinson for stealing money, though.
No, it was not.
All right.
Nor Rasmus Ristolainen.
These are the prevailing opinions online. All right. We had to knock that one off at the top because I knew it was going to make Charlie mad.
Yes. Let me just cover the fucking hockey
So
team.
we get to Ross, and this is kind of something you brought up with the Penguins game, but depending on how the Capitals game goes tonight could factor into how the Flyers have to beat them on Tuesday. How early do the Flyers pull the goalie tomorrow if the game is tied in the third period?
Well, so again, a lot of this boils down to the Washington scenario.
Yes.
And in that scenario where the Flyers cannot allow for the Capitals to get a loser point, it would be very interesting. If the game is tied, how early would they pull Ersson? I mean, Ersson's getting the start.
Yeah,
Tortorella straight up said after the Saturday game that he's got one more in him. I mean, Flyers are open. He's got more than one more in him, but he's at least got one more in him. He more or less announced, it's Sam Ersson. We're not going to Fedotov for Game 82, shockingly enough. But it would be interesting to see when they would consider making that goalie pull. I have not gotten the sense that Tortorella, because even when there are games where the Flyers are losing and it's just a traditional goalie pull, he doesn't pull the goalie terribly early. He doesn't pull him at like the final minute.
He doesn't do it at 140 like the traditional.
Yeah.
He'll do it at like 210, maybe 230.
I've gotten the sense that his sweet spot is like once they pass the 3-minute mark, that's when he pulls. So my guess is that I don't think it would change dramatically given the circumstances. I think he would probably go with the same strategy where, hey, and you know what probably influences this too? How bad the power play is. Like, he probably looks at it as, we have just as good of a chance of scoring at 5-on-5 as we do 6-on-5.
Better.
So why am I going to push it?
Especially like 6-on-5. I mean, like, there's no room out there.
Yeah.
Like, this is that's not an advantage for this team. There being 11 guys on the ice.
It helps them to a degree, and they've scored some 6-on-5 goals this year, to be sure. In part because 6-on-5, I think, just leads to chaos. Like, obviously, there was that Morgan Frost goal with less than 10 seconds remaining a couple weeks ago against the Islanders in dramatic fashion. So they have done it, and I'm sure they will do it. I'm certainly not expecting in this scenario for John Tortorella to just say, well, we're going 5-on-5 because we're a better 5-on-5 team than power play team. However, I don't think, to answer Ross's question, I wouldn't expect this to be anything crazy where Tortorella pulls Ersson with 10 minutes. Like, no, I do not think that he would go that route. I think he understands that the strength of this team is their 5-on-5 play, and there's no reason to do something completely nuts and completely out of character just because it's Game 82.
One of our favorite names here on the list, Paul with the great car ideas. He wants to know, is it reasonable to say the season is a resounding success if we win tomorrow night?
Okay, so I was going to say tonight. I wasn't sure if this was an old question and he was referring to Saturday night.
No, this is just about, I guess he meant tomorrow. Meaning whether or not we make the playoffs doesn't matter, but a strong, complete finish as a response to us falling apart will reinstall faith in the importance of the culture.
Okay, so I actually want to hear your answer to this first. Because I think, like, I know what my answer is. I more or less said it on Saturday. I'm curious what your answer is.
Resounding success? No. If they make I mean, it's hard to say a rebuilding team being in this spot. If they make the playoffs, like, That, yeah, you can't say it wasn't a success, even with the bumps along the way. An 8-game losing streak is still an 8-game losing streak, and 5 or 6 of them were against fucking terrible teams. Like, I know they bounced back, and that's great. It's good to see they didn't quit. And there was the report, either at intermission or one of the stoppages, the rinkside report. Like, the Flyers heard the noise that they think we quit. They think we gave up on this coach, and we wanted to make sure, like, yes, we hit rock bottom with a 9-3 loss to Montreal, but we want to make sure that's not the narrative going into the offseason. That's great. I'm not going to call it a resounding success, though, when you had an 8-game losing streak with, like, controlling your own destiny and everyone fell apart. Is it good to get the information you got, even if it's not information you like? Sure. There's a lot of positives to take. I'm not shitting on this season. There's a lot of positives to take out. There's a lot of information that you gathered. Resounding success, though, no. You can't be in a playoff spot for like 120 days, fall apart against the worst teams in your conference, and be like, oh, yeah, good job. Like, I'm glad you bounced back. That changes my attitude about what maybe this offseason even needs to be a bit. But resounding success, no, not unless they make the playoffs.
So I'm kind of taking a little bit of a different approach to this. I agree. I actually have the same answer in that I don't think I would consider it to be a resounding success. However, I do, and I said this on Saturday, I already consider this season to be a success. Regardless of whether they lose in Game 82 or not, I think this was a successful season in terms of them exceeding expectations, in terms of a lot of the things that happen with individual players and development, in terms of the fact that it does not appear that it was all for naught because they just, after, a strong season, they all just up and quit on the coach in the final 10 games of the year. I think the season has already been a success. The reason, however, why I would say I wouldn't call it a resounding success, it's more because I am still viewing this through the lens of the rebuild. And there were enough things that didn't go their way from a rebuilding standpoint that keeps me from calling a resounding success. Like, I'll start out with like the elephant in the room. They lost their franchise goalie because he's being charged with something truly horrible. Like, Carter Hart will probably justifiably never play another game for the Flyers again. That is a legitimate thing that hurts the rebuild because either you don't, Carter Hart, I think at the very least, was a solid starting goalie. Now you have a goaltending question. If Carter Hart did not get charged with sexual assault and turned out he had nothing at all to do with this, you either would have a legitimate solution in goal, whether it's a significantly above average solution in goal, I don't know, but a solid enough goalie, or you could have traded him away for significant assets. Now you have an entirely new question that you have to answer in terms of who is going to be the goalie of this team in 3 to 4 years when you've hoped they turn the corner. That is a legitimate thing that makes this rebuild tougher. Another thing, and again, I'm not in any way, shape, or form giving up on Jamie Drysdale. Cutter Gauthier situation. You had 2 blue chip prospects in Matvei Michkov and Cutter Gauthier. Now you have 1 in Matvei Michkov, and you have Jamie Drysdale, who, while I still like the talent, he's a project. He doesn't have the same, like, holy shit, they might have a, like, Gauthier could come in and as a rookie score 40. Do I think it's going to happen? No, but like it could. He is of that degree of raw talent. I'm not saying that Drysdale is a bust. I'm not saying that this necessarily definitely hurts the rebuild, but it does add more questions to the idea of, do they have enough high-end talent? I am more confident right now that Cutter Gauthier will be a high-end talent player than I am confident that Jamie Drysdale will be a high-end talent player. Not saying I'm writing him off. I'm just saying I have more confidence in Gauthier's ceiling than I do Drysdale's ceiling, and that hurts the rebuild. It does. You can't sugarcoat it. It hurts the rebuild. So it's those sorts of things. The fact that Joel Farabee didn't finish out the season strong, because I think he's a big piece of this. Like, there are other things that keep me from saying the season was a resounding success, because I'm still looking at the season in terms of judging success based on how I think it furthers the rebuild. I think it was successful because there are a lot of good things. I think that, there are key, like Tyson Forrester's development, love it. Bobby Brink, the fact that he exceeded expectations this year, also love it. Like Cam York's development, great. Travis Sanheim, the fact that it doesn't necessarily appear that contract is going to be a massive albatross, love that. I know Couturier's second half wasn't great, but in the first half, he showed the potential that his contract might not be a devastating albatross. There were a lot of things that from the standpoint of, is this rebuild going to work, have me willing to already call the season a success, a resounding success, not willing to go that far because there were enough bad things that happened for me to remove that qualifier from my description of the season.
Absolutely. No, and I like that we tackled both the big picture and just like this individual season kind of in a vacuum there. I see the super chat from Gary B. We have some off-season stuff we're going to get to later on in the show, so we'll tackle that when we get there. We're going to go to Ethan Freeman's question. This one's kind of fun. He says, take it back to 2010. Let's say that the playoff hopes come down to overtime or shootout, that we have to win against the Caps tomorrow. Which 3 players are you starting in OT to win? Which 3 players go out first in the shootout?
You can't say Ryan Poehling.
I have to put it on my vets. I have to put out, and I know he's not going to do this, and this might not even be all that popular because of who I'm going to name at center.
Okay.
And the fact that he's looks like the Tin Man right now. But I'm going Couturier, Konecny, and Sanheim to start. I have to put it on the 3 most experienced guys, my 3 highest paid guys, my dudes. Yeah. These are the ones who are like, what, am I going to put it on a rookie? Scott Lawton and Tyson Forster, go get it done. Like, that's probably what he's going to do.
Yeah.
But those are the 3 I put out there. In the shootout, Frost, Brink, TK.
Okay. Oh, Brink. Interesting. Well, I agree with you on the overtime ones. I do.
Really?
Yeah. I would go Coos because, it's basically in my mind.
He's going to win the face-off.
It's TK is in definitely. Then I guess the choice is between Sanheim and York. I would go Sanheim. Honestly, I would. I think he looks a little healthier now. I think maybe he's starting to get over what he was battling. So the speed is coming back to a degree. I want that slightly better skater on the ice in overtime. I think Sanheim is the better skater over York. Not that York's slow.
I like his length.
Yeah, Sanheim's better. He's a better skater when both are healthy. He's a horse. Like when Sanheim's playing at his best, he doesn't really skate as much as he gallops. And I want that out there for overtime.
I've seen him join or even kind of start the rush a little the last couple games. So it's like, oh, yeah, he's skating again.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
That's a positive sign.
But the center position, to me, it's either Frost or Couturier. And honestly, yeah, I'm going with Couturier. And in part because, yeah, Frost had that really bad turnover the last time. But a lot of it, truthfully, how many times in his career has Sean Couturier seen Alex Ovechkin? How many times has he faced off against Alex Ovechkin? That's the guy who's going out there first for the Caps. I want the guy who has seen pretty much everything that Ovechkin can do. Even if he's only at 80%, I want that base of knowledge to like, oh, Ovi's doing the cheating thing. I need to get back. I want that out there for that first shift. The shootout, I don't friggin' know. It's a crapshoot.
TK's horrible at the shootout, but also he scores all of his goals on breakaways. So, I'm just putting him out there because who else am I putting out there? I might even, Coots, you win that face-off.
And then get off the ice.
You did your job, bro.
Get off the ice.
Go get him, Morgan.
Yeah.
I might even do that,
Maybe.
And if he doesn't, well, now we have the defensive matchup we want, like you said, with Ovechkin out there.
Yeah, if you can get them pinned for an extended period of time, yeah, maybe Couturier does take the quick hook because then you've got Ovechkin playing defense. And it's great. Look, Ovechkin's an all-timer. We all know he's never been the greatest defensively. If you have him stuck in his own zone, then yeah, get Morgan Frost out there. Why the hell not?
Absolutely. All right, now we go to a question from Nick Hankins, which this is a little bit of news that happened today. Hunter McDonald had been playing with the Phantoms on a tryout basis, and now he has signed his 2-year ELC. So with that being said, with the signing of McDonald, what is the likelihood of Risto playing another game as a Flyer? McDonald will be 22 in about a month. He's 6'4", 205, left-handed defenseman, 6th rounder in 2022. Yeah, he was on an AHL Pro tryout for the end of this season. He's played 9 games with the Phantoms so far, 2 assists, 10 penalty minutes. And now he is signed to his ELC for the next 2 years.
Right.
You think this kind of spells the end? Because the way I look at it is we've said often, okay, you have these defense guys. You have a certain number of, torts guys. How many roster spots are we going to be well, we have to have all right. You have Paling at forward. You have a few of those dudes still under contract. And then on defense, they did just re-sign Nick Seeler. He fits that category of a torts guy, of a defensive defenseman. They love Hunter McDonald.
They do.
They have told us
they can't stop talking about Hunter
They love
McDonald.
this dude. And like Chuck Fletcher loved him.
Yeah.
Say what you will about Chuck Fletcher. His draft's not too bad.
They're looking better in retrospect. A little bit.
Do you think this kind of spells the end for Risto?
I'm not ready to say that for a few reasons. Number one, I am not ready to just plug Hunter McDonald into the 2024-2025 lineup. The Flyers like to give their guys AHL season. Now, granted, McDonald's getting some AHL games right now. And I mean, I have not watched any of them. I've heard he's looked fine. I've heard that he doesn't look overwhelmed.
He got hurt in the first one. Yeah, but like, God damn it.
Yeah, but then he came back.
Yeah.
And I've heard he's looked good. Like, not like, oh my God, this guy is too good for the AHL, but that he hasn't looked overmatched, which is a good sign. But I do think the Flyers in general like to give their guys, I wouldn't say overcook, but they're not going to be hyper aggressive on the promotion.
They believe in that.
So that's number one. I don't think that they are penciling Hunter McDonald into the opening night lineup. Number two, and this is just as big of a deal, I fully think the Flyers will explore the possibility of trading Rasmus Ristolainen in the offseason. I think they've probably had some preliminary discussions, over the last few months with teams to gauge interest. I do not doubt that at all. Rasmus Ristolainen is looking like he's going to miss the final couple months of this season with what is a pretty mysterious injury. He's under contract for, I believe, 3 more years. He doesn't score a ton. He's definitely improved his all-around game, but he's still overpaid at his cap hit. I don't think it's going to be incredibly easy to trade Rasmus Ristolainen. I don't. Even with the cap going up. And you could say the Flyers in an ideal world would like to move Risto. I think that might even be true now, despite the fact that Keith Jones, we know, loves Risto. He also loves Hunter McDonald. I am not ready to say that they are definitely going to find a trade partner for Rasmus Ristolainen, even if they end up being highly motivated to trade him. I think they could look at it as, we don't need to rush Hunter McDonald. We like him. We think he could fill the Risto role long term, but why would we sell low on Risto after he missed this much time with injury? Why not give Hunter McDonald a year in the AHL, kick the can down the road, and maybe if we decide he's ready and he can take that spot, we can trade Risto at the deadline next year or in the offseason next year. Like, they don't need to move Risto now. It's not like they desperately need the cap space, given the fact that I don't think they're going to be aiming to win a cup next year. Could I see a scenario where Risto gets traded this offseason? Sure. But I don't think the Hunter McDonald ELC makes it a certainty because there's a lot of variables going on here.
I expect Rasmus Ristolainen to be traded sometime between like July 1st of this year and July 1st of next year.
I could see it happening before then. A lot of trades happen in June.
Or whenever you're actually allowed to make trades. Whenever that is.
From like the end of the Stanley Cup final through the next offseason.
I could see it being any time between this year and over the next 15 months, basically. But he has missed significant time, even going back to 2021 in Buffalo.
Yeah.
Played 49 out of 56 games that year, I think. So he's missed 7 games.
No, the injury,
that's not insignificant.
The injury risk with Risto is real, even for teams that, like him, are going to worry. And I know he's a big guy, so that helps the perception because people never think that big guys are injury prone. But look at the numbers. Risto has been injury prone.
Played 66 games his first year at the Flyers, 74 last year. He started the season with that mysterious injury.
Started last
year. This year he's at 31 games played.
Yeah.
Like,
it's not great.
He's missed multiple seasons worth of games over the last 4 years.
Yeah.
I don't know what his value is going to be. And if they're going to trade him because we know how much they like him, they're going to want some value.
You would think, right? They're not just going to give him away.
I don't think they're just like, we need to get rid of this dude. It's like, well, if we have to cover half his contract, we might as well just fucking pay him.
Exactly.
Like, okay.
Exactly.
Instead of paying him half to not play for us, let's pay him the whole thing, and he only plays half the games.
I do think that Hunter McDonald is the long-term Risto replacement plan, but I don't think that replacement plan necessarily has to begin on game 1 of the 2024-2025 season.
I don't know if you have anything on this next one, but I thought it was worth asking from, this is a good name, Filibuster.
Filibuster.
Yeah,
that's a
with
good
the
name.
PH. It's pretty good. Does Massimo Rizzo sign and play with the Phantoms for the AHL playoffs? Have we heard anything about Rizzo? He just won the national title
I don't know.
with Denver.
I think what it is, why people are really focused on Rizzo is because
he beat Cutter.
Well, not even that. It's because all of the other college guys are signing right away.
Yeah.
And people are like, where's our guy?
Partying.
Number one, Rizzo is not as good of a prospect as Cutter Gauthier or Lane Hudson or any of these guys that are making the immediate decisions. However, I'm sure there are conversations being had. I'm sure that the Flyers are in discussions with Rizzo's camp. Don't forget also, Rizzo was injured for a while at the end of his season.
He missed some time.
Came back for the Frozen Four, but I watched a little bit of those games. He wasn't 100%. Like, this isn't a situation where you're going to sign Rizzo and even want him in games.
Get him out,
Because, and I'm not even talking about the Flyers. Our filibuster guy brings up the Phantoms.
Playoffs,
like, I think he rushed back as fast as he could because he wanted to play in a national freaking championship. Understandable. I don't necessarily think he's going to be itching to play in AHL playoff games alongside a team that, he doesn't know any of these dudes. So I just don't think there is the same urgency to rush to sign Rizzo that there is to sign, guys like Gauthier, who, they want Gauthier in a game before the end of the season. So that's one of the reasons why. Also, it's fairly obvious he's something of a diva. And it's like, oh, he wants to sign the contract? Get him to sign that yesterday so we don't go through the same shit the Flyers did.
I'm a little surprised he signed.
You thought he was going to do it again?
I thought ultimately he was trying to buck the draft system. And he was just going to come up with excuses to be like, nah, fuck you.
You wonder if he was doing it out of Fox?
I thought he was going to just wait it out.
Yeah.
But he signed, so
well,
that's
also,
that.
he was based in the Arizona area, and now there's no reason to wait that out anymore.
That's
so
fair.
If he was waiting on playing for his hometown team like Fox was, well, doesn't look like that's
so
going
much
to happen.
for that. Yeah, but the Rizzo thing,
I still, based on what I've heard, the conversations I've had, on the record with Brent Flair when we did our interview series back in February, based on the general perception I get from people around the team, I think the Flyers want to sign him. And I don't see any reason why he would not want to sign with the Flyers, given the fact that I don't think Carolina was super hyped up on signing. So, he's not necessarily a guy who, can be real choosy here.
Carolina was going to trade him to us in the Tony DeAngelo deal. We know what happened there.
He was functionally traded to us.
He was, and instead the Flyers buy him out and then swap, what was it, Andre, which Kache did we even have?
David.
David Kache's rights. Yeah. And he's not playing in the NHL again. It was just here's something. So there's not the big nothing next to his name like the Gostisbehere trade.
Look, Rizzo's stats this year were very good pre-injury. Yeah. I get why people are excited. I personally am not super pumped about him as a prospect, but he's a guy, and I certainly agree they should sign him and see if it translates.
Yeah, but in terms of him, kid, you're a national champion. Fucking enjoy yourself. You got
Live it up.
The rest of your life to work. Be the big man in Denver this summer. And then show up hungover to John Tortorella's camp. I bet that'll go real well for you. Let's go to a question. Yeah, let's go to a question from Matza.
Okay.
It's likely the Flyers send Bonk down for another year of juniors, but why? He very clearly performed above expectations in OHL. There's little more he can learn from going there again. If we're a rebuilding team, we should at least give him a chance at the NHL or AHL level. I wonder about maybe a 10-game tryout for him. How old? He was taken last year, so he's probably not AHL eligible.
He's not AHL eligible.
It's probably NHL or juniors.
Yes, that is correct. So no, there isn't an AHL possibility for Bonk. Had he been born about 2 weeks earlier,
he could one of those.
He could have,
okay.
But no, he will. But I guess the good part about it is that he'll still be eligible for the World Juniors.
Oh,
so
that's cool.
There's that positive. Had he been born 2 weeks earlier, he wouldn't be eligible for World Juniors. So that's cool.
Do you think there's a possibility of a 10-game tryout?
I guess you can't rule anything out. I'm not going to rule that out of hand.
They do have a lot of defense.
However, I have always heard that they have viewed him as a 2 years in juniors kind of guy. And the one point where I'll disagree with Matza is that, look, I'm not saying that Bonk's season wasn't impressive. It was. But I do not think he is anywhere close to being a finished product, particularly offensively and with the puck. He racked up a lot of points, but the vast majority of those points were in the bumper spot on a high-powered power play. I guess it's theoretically possible that Bonk could be a power play weapon in the bumper in the NHL. What I can say is I don't think there are any other NHL defensemen who station themselves in the bumper on a power play, so I'm not exactly expecting that to be his role. I think, look, he had a good year. He was a very strong defenseman for one of the best teams in Canadian junior hockey. I do not want to diminish that, but I want him to get better at breakouts. I want him to get better dealing with forechecking pressure. I want him to become a better 5-on-5 scorer before he takes the leap. I think it would be a mistake in terms of his development to rush him to the NHL before he's had a chance to build offensive confidence off of the power play, because I don't think the power play production is necessarily going to be replicable at the NHL level. I do think he has the raw abilities to be a decent enough point producer at the NHL level, but I don't think those have been fully developed yet, and I don't want to throw him into the NHL level and have him turn into Luke Shen.
I agree with that last part. That said, I mean, he'd have to help this power play. There's no way he wouldn't help. But I'm just kind of resigned to the idea of, like, we're not going to see him. You know,
I would be shocked.
It's just kind of one of those things. It could happen.
Look, you never can rule anything out. But I will go into camp expecting, unless I hear differently in my conversations over the summer, I will go into camp expecting that he's going to get, the beginning of camp,
get those two games.
We'll get one preseason game. We'll play in the rookie games and whatnot. Yeah. He'll get that pat on the back, good camp kid, and then they'll send him back to London for one more year. And then his NHL path really begins the next year when he turns pro.
All right. That's kind of what I expected, but I just wanted to hear it from somebody else.
I've got an interesting question from Timbo Slice, so I wanted to put that up there. Just because sometimes we will throw out terminology assuming everyone knows what it is, but we shouldn't do that. Yeah. We have fans, right. We have people watching these shows who don't necessarily know what the bumper spot is.
And good for you.
What is a bumper? I've heard the term, have no idea what it means. Basically what it is that in a power play formation, and I believe another one of our commenters spoke to this a little bit in response, most teams use what is called a 1-3-1, where you have one guy at net front, you have one guy in the slot, you have two guys on each side at the faceoff circles, and then you have the defenseman up top. The bumper is the guy in the slot. Generally, the slot guy is used to, number one, take one-timers from passes from the guys on the flanks, or used to deflect pucks coming from the guy up top, or used to crash the net on rebounds to help out the guy at net front. Bonk has done a really good job of, from what I've watched, of both utilizing the one-timer and crashing the net on rebounds. It's a cool thing that he's scoring a lot of points in that spot, but as I said, that spot generally in the NHL is more given to forwards, usually because they tend to have the best one-timers because their job is to score the goals, and because they usually have the offensive instincts to, be able to find loose pucks when they're there quicker. Is it possible Bonk could end up being a bumper guy in the NHL level? Sure. You know what? If you have a coach that's forward-thinking enough and willing to give it a shot, I'm not opposed to it. I'm just saying that to me, it doesn't seem like the most replicable way to rack up points at the NHL level for Bonk. If he's going to want to be a point producer at the NHL level, I think he's going to need to get better with the puck at 5-on-5, dealing with forechecks, sparking the rush, things like that.
I just haven't watched enough to be like, okay, he's just getting cheap points in juniors, because
I wouldn't call it cheap. I just don't necessarily think they're going to be. He's going to be able to do it the same way.
Some of these goalies aren't that good, and he's playing something that's just not going to be able to do. He's not going to be able to do in the NHL level. But I will say, when you mention a coach forward thinking enough, like, one, again, it's not like the power play can get any worse. Try some shit, and two, we have heard John Tortorella speak about kind of the positionless hockey that I've talked about for years. And you're not a defenseman, you're a rover. Like, I need you. Yes, you line up at defense on the faceoffs, but you're kind of all over the place. He put it in the practice with Zach Werenski and Seth Jones. He's done it this year with York and Sanheim a little bit. Obviously, Sean Walker kind of had free reign to do whatever the hell he wanted out there. I think if there's someone willing to give Bonk a shot at doing what he's been successful at in juniors, it is John Tortorella, but we got to see what his actual skill set is at this level.
We also got to see who the hell the power play coach will be by the time he gets to the NHL.
Yeah, that's a question coming up in a second. First one from Stackatochi. Or no, we're going to go with Brandon Harper here. Sorry, Brandon. Brandon Harper. Torts is on record saying he doesn't pay attention to what Lappy does for the Phantoms. Is this common between farm teams and the big clubs? Would it not be more beneficial for the Phantoms to run a similar style to what Torts does, so when prospects come up, they don't look so lost? I've wondered this as well. Like, we've heard, like, okay, well, now he has to adjust to Torts' system and all this. I get, like, you still need to win games down there and try to be competitive and do what you do as a coach for the players that you have to make it work, because you don't just want to be running something your players can't do. But if the goal of the farm team is to get guys ready for the NHL, should they not be doing what the team does at the NHL level?
So here's a couple things I'll say about this. Number one, that is what the Flyers used to do under Chuck Fletcher and under Alain Vigneault. And I don't think it worked out all that well in terms of player development. So it's clearly not a cure-all in terms of development. Number two, I don't think prospects that they've called up this year have looked lost. I think guys like Ginning and Adert, I think they came up and they looked a lot better than I thought they were going to. So Brandon, I actually disagree with you. I don't think there have been that many examples of guys that get called up and look out of place. Louis Belpedio filled in admirably in the first half of the year, learning a new system. I don't think that the systems are that different. I think they're relatively similar, but they give Ian LaPerriere the flexibility and the freedom to make tweaks and to coach things the way, like, for example, it's not like the Flyers are running zone defense under Torts and man-to-man defense under Lappy. Like, I'm sure there are some things that they're like, all right, if it's this big of a philosophical thing, you got to go with what the Flyers do. But if we're talking about, offensive zone formations, power play things, penalty kill strategies, neutral zone tweaks, because, look, the Flyers run a 1-2-2 in the neutral zone. Most teams run a 1-2-2 or a 1-3-1, like sometimes they'll run a 1-1-3. Like, it's not that complicated systems, but like, the differences between the way the Flyers run a 1-2-2 and the way, the Penguins might run a 1-2-2.
Switches.
There are distinctions. There are differences. And they're not telling LaPerriere, you have to do exactly what John Tortorella has them doing in the middle of the ice. I personally don't think it's a bad thing. I really don't. I think that you should trust a coach to run a system that will get the most out of their players, because it's not just about knowing the Flyer system forwards and backwards. It's about getting these guys confidence. And if you think that you can get your players more confident and feeling good about themselves for a potential call-up by playing a slightly tweaked system comparatively to what the Flyers run, I'm fine with it. And part of the reason why I'm fine with it is because I watched Alain Vigneault and Chuck Fletcher go the other way, and I didn't see it provide any obvious benefits. So to me, I just don't think it's probably just not that big of a deal one way or the other, because hockey systems aren't that complicated.
No, and you want to get ready for what you're going to be doing, but just in general, not saying this maybe applies to two, but they're going to have 5 coaches, and from the age of 13 to 20, before they get to the NHL, they've probably played in every system under every different kind of coach. Like, these dudes play for a ton of teams. They play a lot of hockey. It's probably not, okay, well, no, I didn't do this in the AHL, but I did do this, back in the dub or something,
Everybody has played pretty much every hockey system known to man by the time you get to the NHL.
You got to be able to adjust. So I've often thought about, should it be that big of an adjustment? But at the end of the day, I can't imagine it matters that much.
I do think that said, the one exception I do believe is defensive zone. I do think that is
hopefully
big.
It's a big deal because Jamie Drysdale's having trouble.
Well, because it's just you have to think an entirely different way when you're playing zone versus man-to-man. And if you play one of the two long enough, you just get that ingrained in your head of, I chase this guy versus I hang back. And it's hard. I think it can be done because, look, again, every player has played both. Every player has had a coach that coached man-to-man, and then every player has had multiple coaches who have coached zone. But it is an adjustment because you have to break some habits. It takes some time. Aside from defensive zone structure, though, I don't think anything else is terribly complicated.
Okay. This is actually a question from Stackatoshi last week, and we didn't get to it, but I think it's interesting. I keep hearing guys are injured / playing through stuff / came back early. Why is that, given this year wasn't about the playoffs? That's concerning, given we've criticized this team's handling of injuries in the past, and they promised change and transparency. What's your take?
Man,
they're hockey players.
People are really like our commenters, man. They are very not nitpicky, but it's just like they are looking for things to yell at the Flyers about.
I just think it's I think it's a valid question, just in that if it's like, if this year isn't about the playoffs, why is
but they still want to win?
Travis Konecny playing hurt? And the answer is the players
want to win.
They're hockey players.
Yeah,
that's just kind of the way it is. I do think there was a little bit of there was a time where it was crazy obvious that dudes were given way too much.
Yes,
I
agree with that.
Way too much say in when they can play. And they're just like, yeah, I'm playing through it. And it's like, you really shouldn't.
Yeah.
I don't think that's what's happening here, where it's like, yeah, man, TK's just fucking hurt and he's out there and he's not going to be able to start next year because he's going to have the Matt Tkachuk injury or something, the Aaron Ekblad. I don't think that's what's happening. It's just I can go, so I'm going to go. Well, I could be wrong, but we're also seeing Rasmus Ristolainen, and no one's heard from him in fucking months. He's on Ellis Island. That's concerning too, but that's just I don't know when we're ever going to see this dude again.
So to me, I think the distinction is this. My big problem with the way that they were running the injuries before and sending guys back out there was you would see a guy who would get hurt, they would throw him back out there, and then he would get injured again. And that, to me, was the telltale sign that they were throwing these guys out too soon because they were letting the inmates run the asylum and tell them, I feel good enough to play. Yes, are we seeing some guys, Travis Konecny, I believe, came back, quicker than him being 100%. Jamie Drysdale, I think, has been playing hurt all year. Travis Sanheim's played through things. Cam York has played through things. The fact that none of them have gotten re-injured, they've come back and they're back. This was not Joel Farabee where he was playing through a shoulder injury, comes back, and then 3 weeks later does the same thing and then misses another month. That was the concerning part for me. Hockey players are going to be hockey players. They are going to play hurting. I don't want them to play injured. I think over the past couple of years, there were too many instances where they were coming back and playing injured, and then they would get re-injured because they never stopped being injured in the first place. I think there have been times this year where guys have come back hurt. They have come back hurting. But that's hockey. You're never going to stop that. And I think the fact that no one has gotten re-injured after coming back, who knows? Maybe in past years, Ristolainen would be back, and then he would have gotten hurt again instead of just being out. That, to me, was the telltale sign that there was a problem before. And the fact that we haven't seen that this year tells me that it's not a problem. I am never going to be telling a team, well, you have to wait till the guy's 100% healthy to come back. Then no one's ever going to play.
There's no such thing. And I know we want what's best for the players, and we want them to be healthy and all, but you got to learn the difference between hurt and injured. And it's that scene in the program. It's are you hurt or are you injured? You can play hurt. You're going to have to play hurt. And if you want to get through a Stanley Cup playoff and eventually win a championship, you're going to, what did you call the Conn Smythe trophy a couple weeks ago? It's the attrition trophy.
It kind of is, yeah.
You're simply the least hurt.
The least hurt by the end,
you are the least injured, so you were able to put up a couple extra points. That's what it basically is. That's hockey, man. You're going to play hurt.
Yeah.
And we've had our issues with the way injuries have been reported, the way injuries have been handled.
I think it was too far on one side of it a couple years ago, where I do believe there was an element of the inmates running the asylum, the people making decisions were too willing to take the players at their word. This year, I don't have those kinds of concerns based on the evidence in front of us that guys haven't gotten re-injured. And for the most part, guys have stayed effective. I was worried when Cam York had that shoulder injury and when they threw him right back out there. I was concerned about a Farabee 2.0 situation. Then what did he do? He went out in March and was the Flyers' best defenseman the entire month. So, I guess I'll have to give them a tip of the cap for that one. They were right and I was wrong.
All right, we have another Stackatoshi question here, and this is everyone's favorite question. A league average power play would have provided roughly 20 extra goals this year, enough to obtain likely 5 to 10 more points over the year. I don't know about that part, but Will they address the power play this offseason? Will Rocky still be employed? How does one go about addressing the power play during a rebuild?
Well, apparently, we had a question that came up earlier saying that I have not watched the Jonesy interview on Anthony Oregano today. I was obviously covering practice. I've been busy. Watch it tonight. Apparently, one of our super chatters brought up the fact that Jonesy said they may be looking for a power play quarterback.
Interesting.
The question from Gary B was, who do you think they're going to sign? Gary, I will get to the point this summer where I am looking at the unrestricted free agents. I have had zero time to do that. I have no idea who is even a free agent this year. So I cannot answer that question.
Stamkos, baby.
Well, I mean, he wouldn't even be the power play quarterback. He would just be the power play. He would be the entire power play if they got Steven Stamkos. Point being is that it does sound like at least there is some thought to the idea of bringing someone in. I do not know who that would be in order to adhere to the standards of a rebuild while also getting, because like if you're going to get a power play quarterback, like you got to pay those guys. I mean, I guess unless you wanted to go down the Tony D'Angelo path again, which like we've been down that road. Let's not do that again. But like those guys, generally speaking, like you need to pay some money or you need to trade away some legitimate assets to get. They are fairly valuable. So I don't know if they're going to be able to. The big question here is Rocky. I mean, that's the big question. Now, I believe it was last week, Anthony DeMarco wrote an article saying that from what he's heard, they're not going to be making any changes to the coaching staff. I am on record, and I said this after Saturday or Thursday, not really sure which, one of the many games where they've been terrible on the power play. I made the point that I don't have a problem with them bringing back Rocky Thompson. They cannot bring him back to run the power play. If they want him to just coach the forwards, that's fine. I think he's done a perfectly acceptable job coaching the forwards. He has done a horrific job of coaching the power play. I do not know how you can sell the fan base on this idea of organization-wide accountability when the guy who's coached a power play for the last 2 years has coached the 32nd best power play in the league, and he's coached a power play where this year, unless they score a couple goals in game 82, there's a very good chance it's going to go down as the worst power play in franchise history. I do not know how you can continue to give the power play coaching reins to someone who has produced those kinds of results. And don't tell me it's all just about talent. Yes, it's a lot about talent. No. But guess what?
The Sharks
are
like 20%.
Sharks have a 20% power play. They have no talent anymore.
I think it was after they traded Hurdle, they went on like a run where their power play was like the best in the league for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Like, no, this is through 163 games with Rocky Thompson running the power play. They're at 13.8% worst in the league.
Yeah.
Chicago is second worst at 16.3.
And that's Chicago. Like, yeah, I guess they have Bedard this year, but last year they sure didn't.
But that's like, they're at 13.8. They're sub 14. And then you see the next couple of teams, 16-3, 16-6, 16-8, 16-9. They're at least like all in the same. The Flyers are 2+ points below that.
These are not good teams. Well, I guess the Penguins are a pretty good team. But these are mostly are not good teams.
Penguins are 7th worst over the last 2 years at 18.3.
There's crap teams that get more out of their power play than the Flyers do. And as much as I rant about the Flyers needing more high-end talent, and they do, they're not bereft of talent. They have guys who can score.
Yeah.
Like they're not. There's a reason why they are not bottom 5 in the league this year, and it's not just the magic of John Tortorella. They do have quite a few good hockey players.
No, like they got 760 goaltending for like 20 days, and they're gonna make the playoffs. Maybe there's guys who can play on this team. The fact that the power play is as bad as it is an indictment of the coach. It's never gonna be good with this group of players. But 12%. That's unacceptable.
It is. It's completely unacceptable.
Like you said, the whole accountability thing, you can't sell accountability and keep that guy in charge of that particular thing.
This isn't just bad. This is historically bad.
It's fucking horrendous. I'm going to get to this one before we wrap up because I think it's funny. From Jay, if Salt Lake, and it's going to be Utah, which stinks, but if Salt Lake wants to make a splash, what would you want to trade for Konecny? Everything. Logan Cooley.
Yeah, give me Logan Cooley. I do that trade.
It's an interesting question. Like, I do wonder what they're gonna want to be, because part of the reason Arizona has been so bad is fucking just horrendous ownership. Like, they're playing in a 4,200 seat arena.
They've also just been the dumping ground for every team's bad contract for the last half decade.
But, like, the other part is this rebuild has been going on forever for them. They do have some good young players. The future is bright-ish for them.
Yeah, they got Cooley. They got that Dylan Gunther has been scoring a lot of goals this year.
After you just paid $1.2 billion for a team, are you like, oh, yeah, in 3 years, man, we're going to be real good? Or, like I mentioned Stamkos earlier, do you want to, let's fucking do some stuff and sell some jerseys and be that team? Let's be the Vegas Golden Knights right away. I do wonder, and if that's the case, well, now there's a new buyer in the market. Like, there's a team that basically didn't exist a couple of weeks ago that now does, that could bring you along in the rebuild a bit. But I have no idea.
My general viewpoint is that
they're re-signing.
I think they're re-signing Konecny. However, if the Flyers made an organizational decision that they are going to listen to trades on Travis Konecny, like Salt Lake City strikes me as a team, or whatever they end up getting called. They strike me as a team who could be motivated to make a splash, and the Flyers would be intelligent to talk to Armstrong and see. Like, I just don't think they're going to trade him. But if they did, they would be a team where you want to get them on the line because they have the kinds of young players who
fit the timeline,
would better fit the Flyers timeline.
I'm not. That's to actually provide an answer to the question. I am looking for either prospects or young NHLers, not picks.
Fair.
From Arizona. As much like, listen, I mean, they're bad, so maybe you can get a good pick, but I kind of want dudes who fit the Cam York, Tyson Forster timeline.
I mean, Logan Cooley was the guy I wanted in the Gauthier draft.
Cooley, sure.
Like, he was the guy I wanted in the Gauthier draft. So, like, I would do that trade in a freaking heartbeat. I just don't think the Flyers are going to trade Travis Konecny.
We all silly like the mayor.